Hello and welcome everybody to episode 3 or 4 of Nerding Out with Nic Bodiford. I'm your host and I don't remember how many we've had so far. I am joined this week. Yeah, this is number 4. Joined this week by Mr. Clark Barnes. Clark, how are you?
Doing great, Nick.
Good. This is an exciting day. We got some good news on Gabe Davis. He's playing well in Bill's camp, so that's going to be something that I at least get to feel good about.
It's always the first thing I look for when I wake up in the morning.
Gabe Davis news. That's right. Yeah. Plug for the Bills pass catching article I did a while back and the AFC East podcast that we did. That was number 1. But today we are here to talk about a different division, the AFC North. First team first, Baltimore Ravens. So the big takeaways with this schedule is that they do have a really nice defensive slate in that their expected run game opposition per sharpfootballstats.com has them as the 7th softest slate of run defenses, but their opposing offenses are also very good. I think it's the opposing passing games is where they're really kind of dangerous, which has the potential to lift the Ravens up out of the intended game script that they like to have, the run heavy on early downs. I think the offense is still potent enough that I'm not too worried about that, but there could be some games where Lamar is forced to continue developing his passing prowess, so to speak. So Clark, starting things there, what do you think of Lamar this year? His ADP is 4.12. So he's going at the end of the 4th round as the QB4. Are you taking him there?
So I'm not taking him there, but I do think that that's where he deserves to be. I think he's about the 3rd, 4th most interesting quarterback in fantasy. You posed this question to me and I looked at who was going around him and who was going after him. And QB is yet again just an absolute embarrassment of riches. There's still a lot of wide receivers that I love at that 4-12 spot, like Robert Woods is hanging around there. And then in a round or two, you've still got Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson available to you. So I absolutely think he's deserving of being the QB 4 or 5, but it just probably isn't going to work out in my draft plans to pick him up very often.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think one thing that's kind of tough with Lamar is that I'm always kind of on the hunt for, sometimes to my own detriment, for stacks. And Lamar, the way they run that offense, I think he's unique in that he has like the lowest ceiling stack of all of these elite quarterbacks with their elite pass catchers, because it's basically like him and then Andrews, but not getting to the tight end position quite yet. First, we want to get through the backfield. So J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, this duo, they're probably going to end up finding Pater like a pretty fair amount, but I personally have a really difficult time stomaching J.K. Dobbins ADP, which is 2.09 as the running back 15 in this AFC North preview piece that's coming out, I think tomorrow morning. I profiled the two of them, and I mean, one thing that really stood out to me was Dobbins. When we combine their carries and their targets, he only had one more intended target than one more intended touch than Gus Edwards did last year, running as the number 2. Now, it was J.K. Dobbins' rookie year, so like it's fair, to expect that he's gonna, as the lead dog there, that he's gonna get more work this year. But this just seems like more of a 1A, 1B backfield to me than like a number 1 and a number 2. So I'm much more interested in Gus, who's going 6 rounds later in the 8th round. Where are you on these two guys?
Yeah, I may just be missing out on J.K. Dobbins. There is a group of fantasy analysts and fans, or at least the people I follow on Twitter, who are ravenous or rabid J.K. Dobbins supporters. And when you watch him play, he does look very good. I mean, of course I could be totally wrong, but I don't get it. This is way too high for someone who we know is going to be in a committee and might not be the lead in a committee. There are other committee situations where Nick Chubb, who we'll probably talk about later, he's in a committee too. But we have a very good idea of what that committee looks like, how the work is supposed to go. And then Nick Chubb is obviously the lead dog in that committee. I think Gus Edwards is a good just in case pick because you've got to flesh your roster out. And he's talented. He's going to probably have pretty middle of the road / mediocre value week to week. But yeah, I'm just going to miss out on J.K. Dobbins. And he's, again, totally talented enough next year for us to be talking about him inside the top 5-8 picks. But I way too many chances I'd rather take around him than him at 209. It's way too high.
Yeah. We're on the same page there. I think something that people get really sucked into is the Ravens rushing efficiency. So Gus, he had his yards per carry last year was 5.0, which was the worst of this rushing group. It was 9th in the league overall. So all three of these guys are really good ball carriers. And I think people see Dobbins yards per carry and they just it pops off the screen. And they kind of just stop thinking through it. But yeah, I think too many cooks in this kitchen here for a second round pick on Dobbins. I'm going to just pass the mic to you on this one. What do you think of the Rashad Bateman versus Sammy Watkins battle for the number 1 receiver job?
It seems like the smart money is deferring to the veteran. Sammy Watkins, I think, is kind of a victim of his own success early in his career because he broke out so big. There were some comments that he made earlier in this week saying when he was playing for the Chiefs, his role was to get Tyreek open and to get Travis Kelce open. Not to get them open, but his role was to put pressure on the defenses so that those two guys could take off. He said in the Baltimore offense, his role is to get open and to be the number 1 receiver. He should be the number 1 receiver going into the season. I think Rashad Bateman has tremendous talent and ability just based on what some of the draft guys who I follow have said about him. I think that next year, this isn't going to be much of a conversation, and it might be Rashad Bateman as the number 1. Bateman's the more exciting, but Sammy Watkins is a coveted player who's been in the league for a while, who, when he's healthy, he's probably going to be the number 1 wide receiver. So I'm not interested really in any of the Ravens wide receivers, and we'll leave it at that.
Okay. So I think I'm more interested in Bateman because I have some concerns about the way that Sammy Watkins treated his body off the field. But the nice thing is you don't have to choose between the two of them because you can just get both. Bateman's going in the 14th round right now, which I'm kind of surprised by because we had those highlights from practice where he's roasting. I don't remember which one. One of their starting cornerbacks in practice last week a couple of times. So 14th round, I think even if you're not a huge fan of him, that's a fine place to take a first round wide receiver. And same story with Sammy Watkins. If he's your guy, absolutely go for it because you can get him in these mid-teen rounds. So it costs nothing to add him. And there is going to be some sort of upside here, which leads into the next section. Marquise Brown already has a hamstring injury, and I guess initially the coaching staff thought that this was a day-to-day thing, but it turns out that it's more week to week. The terminology that Harbaugh used was more significant than he was initially led to believe. So I almost wonder if the way that the season starts is just Sammy Watkins is operating as the X and Bateman's operating as Marquise Brown's role. And these two guys just kind of both hit within their realm of potential outcomes in terms of what these guys can do as number 1 and 2 in the receiving game or at least the receiver position. But I was getting excited about Marquise Brown because of these two receivers. Adding Watkins and adding Bateman means that Brown doesn't have to pretend to be an X receiver anymore. But with this hamstring, now I'm way off of him. I'm afraid of when he's going to come back. What do you think of Brown?
Yeah, same kind of deal. You actually raised a good point about Watkins and Bateman being free because I do believe in Lamar Jackson. So taking a shot on them, especially at that price that you mentioned, does seem right. I don't think Marquise Brown has had a history of, at the risk of sounding very stupid, I don't think he's had a history of hamstring pulls keeping him out of games. Is that correct?
I think it was he had like Liz Frank I think it was Liz Frank when he was drafted, and then I think he had an ankle issue, but yeah, I don't recall a hamstring issue.
So these types of injuries are something, the best information that we're getting out of the preseason. So I wouldn't overreact, but I'd absolutely keep an eye on it. If you can wait until you draft to make the decision, but Marquise Brown is probably down there, past the 10th round anyway. So
okay. Yeah. I don't know what his ADP has gone to at this point. I'm checking it out real quick. 10th round right now. Yeah, it's still, I mean, he was 10th is probably acceptable if you're really into him, but I think I'd rather go for Bateman in the 14th than that. Yeah.
Just kind of thinking to myself today, I saw someone say like so-and-so is going to be a bust. I think I'm going to set some personal parameters for me that anyone drafted after the 5th round cannot be called a bust. Okay. And anybody drafted, before the, 8th or 9th round is not a sleeper. I'm just going to put those arbitrary blocks on myself.
Cool. I'll try to remember and hold you to them. Yeah. Okay. So last on this team, the receiving core, Mark Andrews, ADP 5.04, tight end 5. Is he elite? Does he fall into your category of like a guy you should target?
He's the last one for me, and I'm absolutely on board with it. Operates in a field where an area of the field where Lamar Jackson likes to throw, has 2 years with Lamar Jackson and has looked really good. Had tons of touchdowns 2 years ago when I think he was the tight end 2. Took a step back to what I think should be more average, but I think that this whole offensive passing game is going to get a lot better this year. And I think Mark Andrews, just from watching him play, is just a monster. And he's already had that breakout season. So yeah, he's my last tight end I think is worth any draft capital.
Yeah, it's tough not to daydream and wonder about where this guy would be because he has diabetes and that keeps his snap count at like a 60% rate. We'd kind of hope that after his breakout season, I think that you mentioned when he had like 10 touchdowns, he was a tight end too. We were kind of hoping that his snap rate would rise, but last year it stayed pretty much the same as it has been. So I think that because of that, like he's not really going to have an opportunity to leap Kittle or Waller to get, to nip at Kelsey's heels. But I do think that he's still in that difference making tight end range where you get to laugh at your opponent who doesn't have one of these when you do. Okay, on to the next one. Cincinnati Bengals, who evidently are worth $2.275 million. So their strength of schedule from sharpfootballstats.com is basically like middle of the road, which means that we're going to see Zach Taylor. This will be interesting because in the last couple of years when they've had their intended quarterback in there, i.e. Andy Dalton, and not like Ryan Finley or Brandon, whatever, they end up throwing a ton on first half early downs. And when he's out, they rip that first half early down passing rate like way back down. It drops to, so it was at 62%, which was second highest in the NFL. This was in 2020 before Burrow went down last year. So there's 62% of the time they were throwing on first half early downs. After he went out, they throttled down to passing on 44% of first half early downs. So Joe Burrow's knee health is going to be, I mean, drawing from that, like maybe Zach Taylor changes the way that he's calling plays, but drawing from that, it seems reasonable to expect Joe Burrow's health to basically dictate how this offense is going to run. The reports, so we've had a couple guys like Clark, you and I really like reading Dr. Edwin Porras, and he's been kind of not down on Burrow, but sort of alerting the world that Burrow in week 1 is only going to be 9 months and 10 days removed from the injury. And he blew out like everything. Like there may be one tendon that didn't or ligament that didn't get broken, but it pretty much everything in his knee blew up. Most guys returning just from an ACL tear come back between month 11 and 12. The re-injury rate from 9 to 12 is the same, but most guys still want to continue to build up muscle and everything. And so like he's going to be at the very, 10 days into the earliest window that he could possibly come. The reports this week do not seem great. That, you know, Tyler Boyd was calling him iffy. How are you viewing Burrow as the draft season? You know, we're in it. How are you viewing Burrow right now?
So long term, going back and forth with somebody in a dynasty league, I have Travis Kelce and desperately need quarterback help in a super flex, and I offered Travis Kelce for Joe Burrow.
Wow.
The DLF football has that trade pretty close, and I don't use trade calculators as like, see, it's good, but I don't want to make an insulting offer. I want to see if I'm in the ballpark of what a very good site thinks about trade value. So long term, I think Joe Burrow is going to be fine. The comments we're seeing this week, like you said, are very much in line with what we see with the ACL injury for people who don't have the exception of the exceptions recoveries, which we're kind of getting spoiled with these ACL recoveries. So I think it's just going to take time. Burrow is out there and participating in everything. So that's a very good sign. I think that if the knee was truly in jeopardy, he wouldn't be doing it. And the smart move would be resting him, and everyone would be okay with that. So am I going to take a chance on Joe Burrow and redraft? No, because there's so many. The quarterback is the opposite of tight end. Why would you take that chance? There's no reason. Another thing on the Bengals that I just want to mention while we're here is, you know, this is what, the third year for Zach Taylor. You mentioned kind of his coaching tendencies, and we still don't know anything about Zach Taylor other than he's been very not good with a team that's had, you know, pretty poor luck with QB injury. So you got to keep that in mind. It's unfair to judge him, but he's 2-7-1 with Joe Burrow before Joe Burrow got hurt also. So there's just so many questions going into this that I just don't know why you would spend the price to get Joe Burrow when there's so many other good options.
So I'm gonna switch the schedule a little bit here, and we're just gonna go from Burrow, and so we're gonna skip over Mixon just for a second here. How are you treating his big three receivers?
T. Higgins seems like a value.
Okay.
And that's it. I'm sometimes there are teams that you don't feel like you get that I don't feel like I have a good handle on, and that just scares me away from them. It doesn't mean that I won't draft them, but looking at their ADP, I'm just saying no all down the line. If I'm in a real draft and someone falls to me, I'm really excited about these talents. It just seems like a very iffy situation.
Yeah. Okay, so to your point about their cost or their ADP, Jamar Chase expected to take over as the X receiver. He's going at 6.08. T. Higgins a couple spots later at 6.12, and Tyler Boyd is he dropped a little bit. He's now at 9.01. That's interesting. So when I was writing this earlier this week, he was in the 8th round still. And I kind of did this too. I dropped these guys a little bit. Maybe I might have kept Higgins the same because I'm kind of down on him as a potential guy. So Higgins is, for me, wide receiver 47. Boyd is 51, and Chase I dropped down from like 21 to 28 today. It's a really good group, but I think that Burrow has to be really healthy and really ready to actually support all three of these guys. I think Chase, I don't want to jump to, it seems like there's a lot of folks that want to jump to Chase was better than Justin Jefferson in college, and Justin Jefferson was like the second best receiver in the NFL last year. So Chase is going to be the best this year. I can't get really like on board with that, but yeah, these guys are, for me, I think I'm just not going to end up with very many of them on my team because we're still in an area where we're making meaningful picks in that, 6 to 8 or 6 to 9 round.
Yeah, and you're just making bets. So, everyone has value at some point, and me saying this doesn't mean that I think the Bengals are going to be terrible or that these guys aren't talented. But I would just rather make a bet somewhere else. I think it's tight end week over at NerdBallFF.com, and talking about Kyle Pitts and how, Kyle Pitts is a parlay bet with a straight bet payout. He's a rookie, and he's a rookie tight end. Playing for a new coach, right? There's all of these reasons why he might not be the third best tight end in fantasy this season, even though it is within the range of outcomes that he could be. But I just cannot bring myself to take such a risky bet with so so little payoff for that.
Yep.
So
yeah, I got you. I hear you. All right. So then, now we're going to, so Mixon, I was getting all excited about Mixon. I mean, not like tentatively excited. Okay. I don't have him up there where some folks do. He is my, see here, running back 12 right now. So he's one of those guys that like mentally, I think of him as a running back 1 because of what the workload could be, but he's the final running back 1. All of his injuries that he's had throughout his career are, they're frightening, but a lot of them don't necessarily are not indicative of like future injuries from what I have read. Of course, 2 days ago, he shows up with an ankle tweak on the injury report. And it's, I just, in the piece, I just said like, Dr. Porras was cracking up. There was something he responded to on Twitter that was like, will Joe Mixon redeem himself in 2021? And he just captioned it with a bear shitting in the woods. And like, and so that's what I was rolling into this with. And then Dr. Jesse Morse today is like, yeah, dude, he suffered an ankle injury and this is totally risky. And so I think for you good listeners, I might just have to keep dropping him in the rankings until I'm comfortable with where he is. What do you think of Mixon?
So going behind Mixon, got Clyde Edwards-Helaire. This is Fantasy Football Calculator half point PPR ADP. And this is pretty close to what I've seen from, real drafts that I've done so far. After Joe Mixon, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who I'm totally banging the table for this year, Chris Carson, and J.K. Dobbins we mentioned, who I wouldn't rather have, but just no. I won't talk someone out of it because he is relatively inexpensive for what he could be. He's a middle of the second round pick who could get 300 touches, which we talk about is like, 300 touches. Not a lot of players get that. But Joe Mixon could. But again, just another Bengal that I just, nope, not interested in. Not going to try to talk anybody into it either.
All right. So I added Thaddeus Moss to the show notes just because this is fun. And, he's Randy Moss's son and he played with Joe Burrow in college. And I like the fact that the front office decided to go get him. I don't think he's going to do anything this year, but come on. If you're looking for somebody fun to root for with your last pick, I think Randy Moss's kid, tight end Thaddeus Moss, is a fun roster ad, but probably don't do it because I don't think he's going to pan out. All right. On to the next team, Cleveland Browns. So it's a totally like mediocre schedule, but the creme de la crop or whatever the phrase is the fact that sharpfootball.com has them projected to face the softest overall slate of run defenses this year, which is fantastic. I was breaking down their play calling today, and they have a relatively high first half early down passing rate. It's I don't think it was like leading the pack by any means. I'm finding it. No, I'm eating my words here. Final 6 weeks of the season. So when they finally got the Stefanski scheme under their belt, they were passing at 62% of first half early down rates, but they were also averaging, at least on the year, 30.4 rushing attempts per game. So their thing was just like throw some play action at the beginning of the game, get on the board, and then run the hell out of the ball. That kind of play calling is going to shape up very well for this season, and 2, this personnel. So Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Big question is, are you taking Chubb at ADP 1.06 RB6?
Higher. Yeah. So I've got CMC as first. And I think I mentioned this on the other show. How good is he that we just don't talk about him? Because he's so obviously number one, Christian McCaffrey. Anyway, that just blows my mind that we don't ever talk about him because he is just the 101.
Yeah.
And then I have Ezekiel Elliott, Travis Kelce, and then Nick Chubb. So those are, if I'm picking 1 through 4 in a league with you, you know what I want to do. So I know that Nick Chubb has a little bit of a limited upside because of his deployment with Kareem Hunt, but that's okay. I like Derrick Henry too, even though Derrick Henry's probably not going to catch 75 balls. I think Derrick Henry is a good analog or a good comparison for Chubb because there's only one thing that will stop them from performing inside the top 5 or 8 of running backs, and it's injury. And he doesn't have a history of injuries. There's no way that we can predict that otherwise. So I cannot be more in on Nick Chubb. and I'll probably take a couple of shots on Kareem Hunt too.
Cool. Okay, so for Chubb, yeah, I retweeted it today, but Dwayne McFarland's breakdown of their usage is sublime. Chubb, he's got the lead in snaps, he's got the lead in carries. Kareem Hunt, though, sees substantial numbers of both. He has all of the passing game work to himself, and then both of them are featured in inside the 5, with Chubb being the lead back there. The only thing that's probably going to slow Chubb down, like, I think drafting Chubb at the 106 is just, you're drafting him as though his ceiling is guaranteed. And that's just a tough place to draft someone, especially a guy who won't actually, I don't think he's going to see, like, he's not going to see Derrick Henry workloads because they want to keep him fresh. They just extended him like this week. They signed him a 3-year extension. I think that is a little bit too rich for me, that 1.06, but like, if I'm picking in the middle to later the end of the first round, I will just be staring at him because, like, he is so good and he is in the perfect situation. The Browns offensive line is outrageous. But Kareem Hunt, like, smashed the draft button when at ADP 410 RB24. Like, I absolutely love that. Yeah. I think Kareem Hunt is he's my running back 19. Chubb's my RB9. I think Hunt is like locked in as a running back too, and I love all of the passing game work that he gets. I realize now go ahead, get a note in there.
Where Hunt is going, it's getting pretty thin at running back. You've got Mike Davis going just above him, who I don't particularly love as a skill set, but I mean, he's the Falcons' #1 running back. It's incredibly value. But then after that, you have Raheem Mostert, right? Good player, but I really like Trey Sermon, so I'll just leave it at that. Then Etienne, Chase Edmonds. After Hunt, there's a whole lot of guys who could very well hit and outperform. But why I like Chubb so much is the safety factor, and Kareem Hunt also, while very limited, has that safety factor too, of like, he's gonna get this work, and he's very good.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. And I mean, to name some of the other backs that he's going slightly behind: J.K. Dobbins, Josh Jacobs, Swift, Gaskin, James Robinson. I think he can outproduce all of those guys. In all of my excitement, I completely skipped over Baker Mayfield, who I think is a fantastic pick this year. Given the schedule, I think they're going to cut through defenses real early. I think that there will be times when he does not find like huge ceiling performances, but I think that Mayfield, I think I've got him as my quarterback 15, I think is where he's at. Yep, that's it. I think that he is an awesome guy to pair with a draft pick like Trey Lance or Justin Fields. You know what you're getting with him every week. He throws a lot of play action. He's very good at it. Like, good safe bet to pair with an upside guy.
Yeah, I agree. He's very inexpensive and can be the safe guy in your committee. I probably say this every time we talk about Baker Mayfield or a kind of middle of the road quarterback in the Mike Shanahan, Kevin Stefanski system. And I'm going to forget his name now, but the old Texans quarterback who is not especially good led the league in passing. Matt Schaub. Yeah. And Baker and the whole Browns team looked as though they got significantly better in the second half of the season. So it's hard to tell if they just hit a hot streak or they were playing bad opponents or if that was the step forward, but they looked like they were really executing the hell out of this offense. And you kind of nailed it. Mayfield probably not going to get into a ton of shootouts because I think the Browns are good, but he should be very efficient on his throws this year.
Cool. Okay, top passing game weapon in Cleveland. Is it Odell Beckham Jr. or is it Jarvis Landry? Go.
I'm gonna pick Odell one more time.
Me too.
Yeah.
I love it.
He's the most exciting. Jarvis Landry is fantastic, and I've been a Jarvis Landry fan since everyone was mocking him for only catching 110 passes in Miami. He's fantastic. But Odell is the kind of guy who can get inside the top 3 of wide receivers and be like, I should have known that. I don't really see that happening with Landry.
Yeah. So on the Beckham front, injuries have been really his biggest hindrance. He's battled them for his whole time in the league. Most recently, he had the strange hip thing in 2019 where he said that he got bad medical advice, that he should have had surgery, but was told not to. Last year, he tore his one of his ACLs, but he's going to be around 11 months since the injury in September. So he's like perfectly in line with when he should be coming back. He's going the 6th round as a wide receiver 24. I think that is totally a fine place to take a shot on him. There might be some down weeks, given the offense. They do like to run the ball as soon as they get the lead. But as you said, this dude, it's not, you're not surprised if you hear that Beckham housed 2 like 30-yard play action shots, right? Like it's totally within his range of outcomes every week. So 6th round, I'll take it. Landry, though, round 10, wide receiver 43, absolutely. Like that is a fantastic value. I will take it. So he's going 7 picks ahead of Marquise Brown. Like I will absolutely take him every single time in the 10th round over Marquise Brown. I think that it's a terrific value for Landry. And I didn't even know this today. I found this out. Landry actually led the team in red zone targets with 18 last year. Next closest was Kareem Hunt with only 9. He's the number 1 guy there. I figured it'd be the tight ends, but he's the number 1 guy there. So speaking of the tight ends, you got Austin Hooper as number. Oh, did you want to get something in?
I just didn't want to forget your boy. Perhaps the most exciting come from nowhere wide receiver on the Browns.
Yeah. So Donovan Peoples-Jones. I love Peoples-Jones. We don't know too much about him from like athletic measurables. All he did was the 40 and the vertical, but I understand why. He ran a totally fine 40 and then jumped a 44.5-inch vertical, which is not a typo. That is outrageous. 38 is like breathtaking. 44.5 is alien. He had 20 targets last year, and he had the 2nd highest yards per route run of the 2020 rookie class. Now, that's being compared to guys like CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson. Jefferson was number 1. So it's fair to say, okay, only 20 targets versus 100 or 120 or whatever, probably would have gone down a little bit, but I'll take it. I mean, that's not bad. It showed that he was good when he was getting opportunity, and yards per route run is shown to be a relatively predictive stat. I think that he is the guy that Cleveland is thinking could take over the Odell Beckham Jr. role next year if Beckham's health doesn't, if his health prohibits him from continuing at a high level. Next year, Beckham, as a pre-June 1 cut, costs, I think, 0 in dead money, and that for like the next 2 years, 0 in dead money, and they save over $30 million or something. So I think they're going to give Donovan Peoples-Jones some opportunities. They did at the end of last year, and he rose to the occasion. But yeah, I think he's a great late round pick.
Yeah, he has the thing that I don't know how to describe of looking athletic on a field full of the world's best athletes.
Yeah.
So happy to see him get some more touches and see where that goes.
So when it comes to the tight end position, Austin Hooper is number 1. Harrison Bryant, sophomore, number 2, and then 5th-year veteran David Njoku is number 3. These guys were like 3rd, 4th, and 7th in overall snaps on the team, which I didn't think that all 3 of them would manage to do that last year. Hooper continues to produce at a relatively solid level at, one of those like back end tight end ones. He's probably never going to hit what he did in Atlanta because he's playing in a crowded area right now. And he's got a guy like Harrison Bryant, who was an excellent prospect as a rookie last year, chopping at his heels. I think Bryant could overtake him because Hooper is he's a great possession receiver tight end. He's been an okay blocker. Harrison Bryant is full on blocker and pass catcher. And I think if I'm taking a shot on one of these guys, I really like the idea of taking Harrison Bryant. I think the team's out on Njoku after this season when his contract ends. But none of these guys are eligible as like week 1 starters in your fantasy lineup. Is that fair?
Yeah, I agree. Just there's too many good players there for one of them to be good for fantasy.
Okay, moving on. Last but maybe actually least, Pittsburgh Steelers. So looking at their strength of schedule, it's basically a shootout situation. Bunch of really good offenses they got to play and like god awful defenses. What are your thoughts on Ben Roethlisberger this year?
He is like Baker Mayfield in that he is an exceptionally safe, free option to pair with a quarterback if you want to get tricky with it and wait on quarterback. Still looked okay last year. Not great, but still looked okay. Sorry, the horses always sound like you're murdering them. I don't know if you heard that. Yeah, I understand. I feel like the ADP that he's at now is a good dynasty ADP for Ben Roethlisberger, but he's still going to be a viable starter in fantasy this year, I think.
That's great. Yeah, so he's 14th round, 25th quarterback overall. Right. I mean, I've kind of got him in that range. But my biggest fear is that they had 3 good offensive linemen last year in Alejandro Villanueva, Marquise Pouncey, and David DeCastro, and all of them are gone, and the other 2 guys are really bad. And they brought in like a good right guard, and outside of that, like everybody's PFF grades are like 55 or worse. It's a unit that I think edge rushers are just going to blow through on every snap. So Roethlisberger is probably going to throw a lot, but I think he's going to be under duress constantly. So for me, it's a toss up, but
Juju season, baby.
Yeah. Okay. So let's pivot to those guys. So what do you think of Juju? His intended air yards on a per pass basis last year were 5.8, which was 4th lowest in Next Gen Stats database. What do you think of Juju? How does he stack up to Claypool and Deontay Johnson?
I think I must be higher on Juju Smith-Schuster than almost everybody else here. I think that he's excellent, and I think he's going back to the role that he plays really well, being able to move around, play some on the outside, but mainly run as the third wide receiver who could be a really dominant piece of the game. Claypool and Johnson, who is picking these wide receivers for the Steelers? They're so good at it. They're absolutely loaded at wide receiver. So I think it's going to be Ben Roethlisberger in the shotgun like 98% of the time.
Can you imagine having a receiving core that's so good that you can just move away from Martavis Bryant?
Over Emmanuel Sanders, Antonio Brown, these are all guys that left, and it was okay.
Yeah, that's fair. So Juju, to your point, he finished as the wide receiver 18.5 point PPR last year. He had the ninth most catches in the NFL, 97. If he keeps that role, then I think that he can stay there as just like this super high floor play he's operating as their tight end. Now they brought in Pat Freiermuth, who I think this is interesting because I think the other 2 NerdBall guys on the show, on the podcast, both Pete and Jordan, I think that they view Eric Ebron. This is as we're going off on a tangent here, but I think that they both view Ebron as a top 15 play. He's like tight end 27 or something for me. I think that Freiermuth is going to take a lot of snaps. And I think that given their offensive line deficiencies, I think that Freiermuth's potential blocking ability, we know Ebron can't. I think Freiermuth is going to have more snaps than people are thinking. But ultimately, Roethlisberger may just prefer to throw to Juju rather than the rookie tight end. Any thoughts on how those positions interact?
Yeah, I think one of the great writers we have over at NerdBall, Patty Cooper, has Eric Ebron as a good sleeper target. And I think he is just for volume and just because there's, in my opinion, 5 tight ends that sort of matter and then 30 guys that you're just praying get you a touchdown. Okay. And Eric Ebron's one of those guys. He could get you a touchdown, and Roethlisberger I think likes to throw to the tight end, but he's not going to force it. Okay. Freiermuth, my understanding of him coming into the draft is that he's going to be a pretty classic tight end. He seems to play that position specifically really well. He blocks well, he runs well, he can catch, but none of it is like amazing and outstanding. So I think he will play a lot and he'll be in there helping out that offensive line. But that's going to be 2-3 years, I think, before we even start sniffing around there for fantasy. The Steelers need their tight ends to block. Yeah, so I'm not super excited about drafting them, but I will take a shot on Ebron if I have to stream every once in a while.
Okay. Back to the receivers. Just wanted to cover ADPs real fast. So Deontay Johnson's the most expensive at 508, wide receiver 22. Claypool is 701, wide receiver 29, and Juju is 802, wide receiver 33. So yeah, I mean, if Roethlisberger is into targeting Juju, then that's going to be a great place to have taken him. For me, I'm probably just going. So I think that Deontay Johnson's route running is like fantastic, and his drops don't really bother me. I'm just more concerned about the line than anything else.
Yeah.
But Claypool is, I mean, that dude looked like Megatron. He's enormous. He's so good. He is so good, and he's going to be so good for so long. Yeah, 2.0 yards per out run, 18th best in the NFL last year. Like that guy can just flat out play. And that
he's a target. He's
yeah.
Again, talking about guys who look like a superior athlete on a field of the world's best athletes. Geez, Claypool looks good.
Yeah. So maybe I might need to get a little higher on Roethlisberger just because I think that these guys can kind of drag him up. Okay, so Najee Harris is going at the beginning of the second round. I wrote down 203, but I think it is 202 as the running back 11. Yeah, 202. He scares the hell out of me. Sell me on him.
I'm in. Just absolute traditional workhorse back who can catch, who can do things. A little bit older coming into the league. I don't care. I'm just looking at the first 3 or 4 years for Dynasty and for redraft. Absolutely going to be the man. He wasn't drafted in that range of Ezekiel Elliott and Saquon Barkley, where it's just like this hyper talented guy that could finish as the running back 1. I don't think that that's within his range of outcome, but he's not being drafted there. He just looks so freaking good at playing the running back position. Like he looked like he went to the right hole. He looked like he was making the right block. He could catch well, incredible balance. Offensive line, huge issue. And I get it. And that's why he's going at the beginning of the second round instead of the middle of the first. But it's just almost guaranteed an extreme amount of volume from a team who wants to give one running back still all the volume that they can handle. Offensive line concern, totally legit, but I am in. If I'm at the swing and I get Austin Eckler and Najee Harris, I'll take my chances with that. I'm super excited.
Okay. So I've got him as the running back 16 right now, and I moved him up. I was a little bit lower on him there. So today I projected him for 300 carries at 4 yards per carry. I actually did. I hit him with Ezekiel Elliott's per carry and per catch numbers, and he came out to around 1,500 yards. Didn't bother looking at touchdowns because that's a gaudy number. I think he had 300 carries, 50 catches, and 1,500 yards. That's really good. And so that's kind of like, if you have that kind of extreme volume, efficiency doesn't matter all that much. For our bold prediction show, I think I said he finished outside of the top 24 at the position. Again, bold prediction show. But God, I just think that like defensive tackles are going to ragdoll the guards and it's tough. I probably need to get higher on him. I would take him in the third.
Yeah,
but early.
I didn't know I was the highest on the site. I guess I have him 12th, and that sounds right. I don't like to look at my ranks every day because if I did, I would change my ranks every day. So I like to look at them after a week or two.
Okay. And
so it's always a fun surprise to go back and see where I had people. Najee Harris 12. Yep, that still feels right. Very excited about Najee Harris.
All right, so final name on the list here. I think James Washington is an awesome late round pick. Dude already showed that he could do it. They just got better players, and like he would start on a bunch of teams. What do you like? If one of these guys is out, Washington is immediately on the flex radar the following week. Do you have interest in him? Yeah. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, just as a super late flyer, I agree with your assessment completely. He is very good. He just happens to be behind. This is probably the best wide receiver trio in the league.
Might be.
Yeah.
It's up there. Yeah. It might
it's at least close.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in where James Washington goes next year.
Me too. Totally. Yeah. So his contract's up after this season. I think that if he goes, I hope he's not a player that goes to a place where we're like, no, what? Why did you do that? It'd be
like
cool
if you were to go to Buffalo, how exciting would that be? Or something like that.
No, that'd be terrible because that he's going to get Gabe Davis's way. I don't like that.
Oh,
but
sorry.
You're right. That would be fantastic. He would probably crush it. All right. Anyway, so that'll do it for the AFC North. Clark, do you have anything coming out? I failed to ask you this. Do you have anything coming out that you would like to plug in the coming weeks?
No, we're just doing the pods and we're in the midst of tight end week. So I took tight ends as my rank and just kind of, well, I won't give it away, but it's a short, sweet read. So give it a look.
Okay, cool. All right. As always, I appreciate you coming on. Follow him. That's at NFL Clark. I am at Ginger__Nic, spelled NIC, and we are at NerdBall FF. Thanks for tuning in.